Good morning, everybody. This is Mr. Stevens. It's May 4th. This is going to be our last week doing ecosystems, and then next week we're going to start moving into cells and biochemistry. So, what we're going to do is today we're going to talk about relationships in an ecosystem. We're going to talk about indirect effects tomorrow. I'm going to have a live session today as well. I forgot to put that on here. We'll have a live session on Monday and Wednesday at 11 a.m. And then for the rest of the week, we're going to do a Socratic seminar where you guys actually have to solve a problem facing an ecosystem. So today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through briefly what all the different relationships are, and then at the end, you guys should have a better understanding of what all those things are. So, what are we going to cover today? We're going to cover ecological relationships, competition, and indirect effects. Okay? Remember, take notes as we go through all this, um, and you should be able to explain the different types of relationships that can be found inside of an ecosystem. So, ecological relationships. Predation. That is what happens when one organism will eat another organism. And we talked about that on Thursday last week, where you guys could see predator prey relationships and how important those are to an ecosystem. And as you go up an or a food web or a food pyramid, there's a lot of energy loss that happens. But then you have these things called symbiotic relationships. These are interactions between two different things, two different organisms. And there are four different types. There's competition. We call that just survival of the fittest. Mutualism. That's where two organisms benefit off of their relationship with each other. Commensalism. That's where one benefits and the other doesn't really care about what's going on. And then finally, parasitism, which is one negatively affects the other. All right. So we're going to go through each of these examples really quick. Now, the first one is competition. This is what you think of when you think of ecology. You think of survival of the fittest, the strongest thing wins. Okay. This is when two types of species compete against each other for the same resource. Okay. Um, Now, it could be two types of species, or it could be two organisms within the same species. This could mean food, habitats, or mates. So up here you can see that these two deer or elk are competing for the right to mate with another elk. Okay. Then over here you have competition. You see that there are a bunch of things trying to eat this zebra right here. A lion, you've got some vultures, and then down here, you've got these cute little prairie dogs, and they're competing, just trying to eat as much as they can. Okay? Now, sometimes this will result in something dying and something living, but it depends upon the situation. Okay? Now, the next one is called mutualism, and this is where two different species, okay, they benefit from their relationship with each other. Okay, so in this case, we have honeybees. Honeybees benefit because they get nectar from flowers. Flowers benefit because bees will help them spread their pollen to other flowers and reproduce. Okay, or you have something like clownfish and anemones and how they benefit each other because one provides a safe home and the other actually cleans and maintains the area around that. Okay. Or you have like crocodiles over here. Actually, I don't know if it's a crocodile or an alligator. Okay. With birds that'll live on top of it and they'll actually make sure that they clean the alligator. And this gives this organism a safe place to live because nobody really wants to go around an alligator. Okay. Then we have commensalism, and this is where one thing benefits and the other thing does not really care. Okay? For example, we have like an antelope over here, and it's got a bunch of spider webs living on it. The antelope doesn't really care, but the spider has a safe place to live. Or these like barnacle things that are living on a humpback whale. That is giving them a place to live, so it's benefiting them, the humpback whale really doesn't care. Okay? You can see tons of examples. If you just type in commensalism on Google, which I recommend you guys all do, so much stuff comes up that of each of these types of examples. All right? And then finally, we have parasitism. And that's where one thing benefits and the other thing is actually harmed. And sometimes, okay, um, sometimes this can even lead to the death of an organism. This is like the parasites we normally think of, like mosquitoes or um, like worms that are in your body or ticks, things like that. Those are where one thing benefits, the other thing doesn't, and that ends up sometimes it will actually kill the organism. Okay? Now, a very this is something that humans actually help to cause, and it's a very bad thing, is when you have an invasive species. So this is where you have one organism that will go into another area that it's not native to, and it'll start living there and it'll start really thriving in those areas. Okay. And it can lead to a decrease in negative organisms and changes the entire balance of the ecosystem. There are so many examples of human beings moving one organism from one location to another location and that organism thriving. The best example that we have in the United States is this one over here. And you guys can look up all these different types of examples of invasive species. There's literally thousands of different types of these. But the biggest one is pythons in Florida. Um, People brought these pythons from Indonesia and Asia, places that they were native to. They brought them to Florida, and pythons didn't used to exist in Florida. What happened was they found that this ecosystem benefited them a lot, and these pythons went crazy, reproducing, and now they're out of control and they're threatening the natural ecosystem. Things like alligators are actually eating. They're competing with everything, and so the government actually pays people to go out and kill these pythons now because of the damage they've done to the ecosystem. Okay. Now, some populations use the same resource. Okay. This can lead to what we call an indirect effect, the result of one cause leading to the effect that causes one or more other effects. Okay. So, the orca and algae are not competing with the jellies, but they're indirectly connected on the food web. So if we look at this, we see the orca, okay, eats the sea turtle, and the sea turtle eats the moon jelly, and the moon jelly eats the zooplankton. All right. Um, they're not directly involved, the algae and the orca, but they're connected. And you can see that if the algae, something happened to them, the orca, okay, you could have some really bad effects because the orca would not have food. Or the vice versa. If the orca wasn't around, sea turtles might go crazy, and that could cause the algae to be affected. Okay? So you need to look at all that and be able to understand how one organism can have an indirect effect on something else that is further down the food chain or food web. Okay? Now, the simulation, out of all the simulations we've done in Amplify, this one is by far my favorite. And it's so easy to use. And I really recommend you guys spend a lot of time going through the simulation and working on it. Okay? So, what you guys are going to do is you guys are going to work today to complete each mission and demonstrate how it's possible. The first one is you want to find a way to increase the size of the clawcat population. The clawcats are these red organisms down here, without changing the size of the scalebeak population. So how can you increase this and keep this stable? The second thing is I want you to find a way to decrease the size of the greenleaf population up here, okay, without changing the size of the wee bug population. And what we'll do is today we're going to go through these simulations during our Google Meet, and I'm going to help you guys try to understand how to use them. So I really encourage you guys to show up today to the Google Meet because we're really going to be playing with the simulation for probably about 25 to 30 minutes, and I'm going to show you how indirect effects happen. All right. So, um, so what I want you guys to do for your homework today is I want you to follow the instructions and play around with the sim to figure out two things. One, how can you increase the population of the clawcats? Two, how can you decrease the greenleaf population? Think about why this is happening and one change in an ecosystem, okay, how one change can alter the entire thing. So remember, you're going to go into the simulation, which is in Amplify. So log in through Clever, go to Amplify, click on the hamburger, okay, on the left-hand side, and go down to the ecosystem simulation. All right. And then today at 11 a.m., we're going to meet. We're going to go through everything. And I'll show you guys how indirect effects happen in a simulation. Okay. So, two things today. One, play around with the simulation. Two, what I want you guys to do is I want you to go in to Google, start looking up examples of parasitism, commensalism, mutualism, competition, all these different ideas. Try to get an idea of maybe even like one of these types of relationships that happens in our area. Um, or even look up like a really good invasive species that you could look up would be like the bark beetle up in the mountains. Okay. So today there's no real homework assignment you're turning in. This is just practice. Okay. So make sure you do the check-in question, play around in the simulation, and I will see you all at 11 a.m. Okay. Have a great day, guys.